So as we were driving down here, I was thinking of death and resurrection. That there is something that has its own, that literally has a kind of resurrection. These words resonate for us because they do speak to it at a very deep level. They're not just, old stories. They're actually deep spiritual, psychological transformations that happen within us. That there is a kind of resurrection. But there's not a resurrection before the letting go. Right? There's not a resurrection before some element of not necessarily physical death, but a kind of psychological letting go, a kind of psychological emotional death. I've always thought it was interesting about the difference between adults and children. Here's to me one of the prime differences between adults and children. I don't know about you when you were as a kid, but for me, at kids, for all that we, worship them, they can also be rather nasty at times and self-centered. And I remember occasionally me and my best friend who lived just across the street from me, we would get in these drag-out arguments where we would graciously declare how much we hated each other and let each other know that we were never, ever talking to each other ever again. We'd be like 7 years old, I hate you, I'll never talk, we'd go our own ways, which was just across the street. And I'd slam the door hoping that he could hear it. He'd slam his door hoping that I could hear it. And we'd be, so you'd have this resentment and bitterness and, talk about resistance. And then, in a kid's mind, like, especially if it's a summer day, to be in the house not playing with your best friend for 15 minutes, it's like forever. Remember how that boredom could hit you, and it was just like about the worst thing you could possibly try to endure, and it wouldn't be 15 or 20 minutes before one of us was going over to the other's house and knocking on the door and opening the door, and it would always be the same thing. It would always just go, so, you want to play? No mention about the drag-out fight, no mention, I hate you, I'll never talk to you, no mention of anything. It was as if, as a kid, a different agenda arose, right? Which is, gee, I'd rather be together with them right now. I'd rather be playing. So I think that's what I'll do. And so you do it. They answer the door. They're already wanting to play again. So you just say you want to play. Okay, right? And you just drop it. That's non-attachment, right? Really good non-attachment. Kids coming together, right? What happens when adults have that argument? It's not quite as simple, is it? The doors slam. It's going to take a long time before they open. Do you know what I mean? Even if you're sitting in the house going, gosh, I'm bored, it's like, there's no way. I'm not going to the house, I'm not calling, I'm not emailing, I'm not texting, unless it's going to be something nasty, Forget it. Which is funny, isn't it? It's odd. Why adults so often choose some version of that instead of the kids, which are just, I'm done with that. That's old. I'm bored. Let's play. The adult's got to go through a whole process. Do you know what I mean? You're going to have a long, long, long talk. And how the whole thing. And that's fine. Of course, that's the adult world. Adults basically move through life like molasses. Have you ever noticed? Emotional transitions, pretty hard for adults. You can go from happy to really happy, but anything outside of that, going from unhappy to happy, or from resentful to ecstatic, or to, judging to non-judging are usually the transition zones are much more laborious for most adults. And it's all because of, we're resisting. We're attached and we're holding on, which is really the same thing. Resisting and attachment are really the same thing. But see, in the kid, the ego is still so fluid that they can experience that death really quickly and really easily. If they get bored, they just drop it. They move on to the next thing. They'll die. They don't got somebody that they're trying to present to the world. That's what people like about children. They're not trying to impress you. They're not self-conscious enough to be wondering, what do you think about me? Do you like me? Do you think I'm good enough? I mean, it doesn't take long before you get all that sort of nonsense, but children when they're young enough, live in a different domain. They can let go more easily sometimes, not always. Of course, we all know, little Johnny having a meltdown in the grocery store is not a good version of letting go, but in some domains they can let go quite easily because they don't have a persona to protect. All they have is, I was really upset and now I'm not. So there's these little deaths that are always with us. And each death has the potential to reveal a new kind of life, a new kind of birth. Unfortunately in our culture, death is only seen as such a dark, terrible, awful, occurrence. But actually, the opportunity to die, which is just the opportunity to let go, is always with us. Is always with us, constantly. The opportunity to let go and be happy, hold on and suffer is always with us. As adults, we often think a whole host of preconditions need to be met before we can let go. And then you might find yourself in a situation where all of a sudden you realize that's not true, that no preconditions needed to be met at all. Maybe it'll happen just before you physically die. You'll just run out of time. There's just no more time to be holding on to all my resentments, my judgments, my ideas, beliefs. There's just no more time. Life's too important. I only got a week after all. Is that what I want to be doing with my last week? And you might just let go of it all, without anything happening, no preconditions being met at all. You just decide to let go, right? Which is really what it is to forgive. Right? Forgive isn't I'll forgive if you do. Forgive is I'll beat you to the punch. I forgive. Period. That's it. You forgive or you don't forgive. Doesn't matter. Letting go. So we meet this same dynamic every time you sit to meditate. You're actually sitting in this dynamic. Resist and have some sort of difficulty, or just let go of resisting and have no problem at all. That's the beauty of meditation, because it's like a mirror, right? It doesn't tell you what to do. It's just your own consciousness is like a mirror. It just says, here's the way you're doing it. Now, how's that working out for you? I think sometimes in meditation we're so busy trying to do it right. You're counting your breaths, or you're saying thought to every thought that passes, or sensation, or whatever we're doing, all the techniques we have, which are all fine, but sometimes we can get so caught up in trying to do it right that we actually miss one of the most powerful qualities of meditation, is that it's this perfect mirror to see ourselves. All of it. The parts we like, the parts we don't like. Basically what we see is our relationship with the moment. That's what meditation shows us. And sometimes we can be so caught up in trying to do everything right that we never really notice that meditation is showing us our relationship with our own existence, with our own life, with our feelings, our relationship with our thoughts, our relationship with our bodies, our relationship with our emotions. It's just showing us a relationship with just sitting in the room doing nothing for 40 minutes or whatever it is. And it's showing us our relationship to what is. And if we care to start paying attention, we start to discover something that's extremely empowering, which is, I'm doing it to myself. Right? No one's making me miserable. All I got to do is look in the mirror that's presented with me when I'm meditating, and I can see exactly how I'm causing myself my own sorrow. Which you could see that as bad news if you went into the sort of blaming mind, or you could see it as good news because you might realize the key to your own happiness and well-being isn't in someone else's pocket. In this course I'm teaching right now, we're in the middle of a 4-month course, and we're in the part of it that's talking a lot about emotional maturity. And the reason I'm talking about it, as some of you will know, that simply because you have even some great and deep, profound awakening does not mean that you are emotionally mature. You can be quite awake and very emotionally stunted, or relationally stunted. And it's always seemed to me that one of the most fundamental insights about any degree of emotional maturity is seeing that we're doing it to ourselves. And it's also one of the hardest things, for some reason, I don't even know why, but it's one of the hardest things to let in. To really let in. That we're doing it to ourselves. It's not them. Even if they were real jerks at some point in your life, even if somebody was really quite terrible and it really did hurt you, you can't deny any of that, can you? You can't deny anything that ever happened, not with any reasonableness. But what's continuing it all? What am I doing with it? It's one of the keys to emotional maturity, you see, because if anyone else is responsible for how you feel now, you're in trouble. Because it means the keys are in their pocket, and until they change, you're stuck. You see, but our human minds want it both ways. Our human minds want it to be something like this. You're responsible for my happiness, for my unhappiness, and I really believe that I can change. How you can have both of those, I don't know. How could you? That's why it's a great leap, even to step into emotional maturity, where we start to go, okay, something in me may have learned how to traumatize itself, or learned how to be angry with itself, or learned to be judgmental about itself, and somebody in my past may have really contributed to that. There's no denying that. But boy, I have embodied that really well. I have become the means of my own unhappiness. And it's such an important thing to realize, because it means when we see this, we see that we have the means to alter it. If it's in somebody else's domain, we are stuck until they change. But most of the people you know in your life aren't going to change substantially. Especially the ones you're waiting to change. All the ones you don't care if they change, my God, they'll transform amazingly throughout your whole life. And the ones you really want to change, especially the things you want to change about them, they may be transformed in so many ways. And then that one little way that, And the same thing is personally, too. Have you ever noticed that? The things about yourself you dislike the most, are those the things that change or stay the way they are? They tend to stay the way they are. And the things that you really don't think about that much, you're not obsessed with, you look back over your life and you go, wow, I've changed so much. Yeah, I've changed my mind about this and about that. I've changed how I feel about this and feel about that. But those parts of myself that I really judged and hated, they have a way of just being locked in time, you know? They're like the ageless part of you, but in a really unfortunate way, you know? It's like a sort of a form of emotional Botox or something. Now, in the tradition in Zen, you know, they know all this very, very clearly, and so not so much probably, I don't know what's going on in Zen in America right now, actually, but traditionally, they would actually put you in situations to induce this sort of moment of reckoning. They'll put you in a situation and make it so horrendously difficult. It's usually called a Zen retreat. Right? And sesshin. And they would make it so, you know, as they say in Zen, great doubt makes great enlightenment. You ever heard that? Great doubt makes great, which doubt in that context means great questioning. Great questioning, which is true. Great questioning does often lead to great opening. But it's not easy to have your question put in your face and have you unavoidably just sitting there facing your question, you know? And in Zen, they would traditionally, I don't know about nowadays, but they would just put pressure on you to solve that existential dilemma, whatever your dilemma was. And you would feel more and more pressure and more cornered and cornered and cornered and cornered until you felt totally, absolutely cornered. And you didn't know what to do. And if you're lucky, something in you might just let go. It's kind of like inducing a kind of death before you die response. It's actually a brutal way to go about it. It's a really difficult way to go about it. It's a very masculine way to go about it, you know, but so it's not necessary, but it is really important to be able to look into that mirror. Because that's where all the freedom is. And it's almost unthinkable, but one can just drop it. It's not that you're dropping the content. You can't drop the content, but you can drop your resistance to it. Anytime you want to let go of resisting more than you want to hold on. But you know how you can be trying to let go and still holding on at the same time? I think meditation often brings them to that space where they're really trying to let go, but something's holding on. But they really want to let go, but they're really holding on. I really want to let go into the unknown, but the problem is it's just so unknown. So, you know. And you sit with that until you're tired of holding on. I suppose until we're ready to live without a whole host of preconditions. You know, that we'll have I'll love when. And then you just write in your precondition. I'll love when. If. But. When all the preconditions are gone, And that's a kind of resurrection. That's a kind of new life. Same person,